Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rahul Verma. I work at the Center for Policy Research here in New Delhi. It is my pleasure to welcome two of my panelists who are known personalities at studying and writing about Karnataka politics. Since Karnataka is going to poll on May 10th and the counting is going to take place on May 13th, in the usual CPR tradition, what we are trying to do is have a round of conversation before the elections, and then we'll have another round of conversation on May 15th after the results come out. So thank you everyone for joining. Let me introduce my panelist. Maya Sharma has been following up, not just following, has been writing and speaking on Karnataka politics for now many decades. I have been seeing and watching her reporting from Karnataka for last at least 2 decades that I can remember on NDTV. She's a journalist and consulting editor at NDTV. Thank you, Maya, for joining us today.
Pleasure. Absolute
Professor
pleasure.
Chandan Gowda, thank you again for joining us. Professor Gowda is Ramakrishna Hegde Chair at Institute of Social and Economic Change at Bengaluru. He's a playwright, actor, and so he wears many hats just apart from writing and commenting on politics. Thank you, Chandan, for joining us again today.
Thank you, Rahul. Pleasure.
Thank you. We'll have the usual format for some of these discussions. What I'm going to do, I'm going to talk for 2-3 minutes just to lay out the plan. And then I'll start with Maya asking her some questions, and then to Chandan. And meanwhile, I'll request audience to just put questions or comments they have in the Q&A box. So in the second and third round, I can keep picking some of those questions and ask both of the panelists to reflect on that. So let me make 4 observations to begin with. And this is someone who's sitting in Delhi and trying to talk about Karnataka politics. So please pardon me if I'm missing something, and I'll request Maya and Chandan to elaborate or correct me if some of those observations are not right. First observation about Karnataka politics, and especially of last 2 decades, is that in last 20 years, we have seen only one single party majority government. That was in 2013 when Congress party came to power. And that also happened because in that election, B.S. Yedurappa, BJP leader, had parted ways and had formed a separate party, which created conditions for Congress to achieve single party majority. And so one question to look forward for this election in 2023 is whether we will see the series of hung assemblies where a lot of back and forth happens between parties after the results come out, right? Second, I think the nature of fragmented politics in Karnataka is also dependent on that various regions that make up Karnataka have very peculiar style of politics, right? And so if you look up in north, the Bombay Karnataka region or the coastal Karnataka region, in these 2 places, BJP has significant presence, does well comparative to other regions. Then the regions which are aligned to the Andhra border, so Hyderabad Karnataka region or the central Karnataka region, Congress has a slight advantage in those 2 regions. And finally, towards the south, what is also South Karnataka or Old Mysuru region, in that region, it's largely Congress versus JDS competition. The third force, Janata Dal Secular, BJP used to be a very minor player in the South Karnataka region. Though in 2019, because Congress and JDS contested the election in alliance, it created conditions or allowed entry for the BJP to make some inroads in the South Karnataka region. So the second thing for us to reflect and think today is whether the inroads that BJP made in the South Karnataka region, is it just one-time phenomena or Lok Sabha election phenomena? And in the assembly election, it will again be a Congress versus JDS fight, and BJP will remain a minor force. Third, because of these 2 things which I just talked about, anyone who works with numbers a little bit would know that Karnataka presents an interesting picture where the vagaries of first past post the system is reflected in a very interesting way. So BJP in last couple of elections scores lower vote share than Congress, but converts higher seats. And this largely happens because BJP gets almost insignificant portion of votes in South Karnataka. So that's why their vote share is low, but their ability to convert seats in coastal and Mumbai, Karnataka is really, really high. So that's why the vagaries of so spread of votes basically plays a really interesting outcome in terms of how seats get distributed. My fourth point is something which we are going to, I think, reflect much more in today's panel, which is this election is important for all three parties. Of course, we say this for every election, but think about it. For BJP, Karnataka is still their only southern fort, while they have been trying to expand in other areas of South India. The ability to hold South actually, or ability to penetrate in South, depends on whether they manage to hold Karnataka or not. In some ways, the party in Karnataka so far has tried to remain independent of the central leadership, especially under B.S. Yedurappa. But the way some of the older leaders have been leaving the party, and BJP is not making any serious efforts to retain them, also shows that perhaps this is a strategy to let the old guard go and basically bring the new BJP in central leadership mold. And this is what I would like Maya to reflect a bit on. For Congress, since 2018, after the Congress won Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, after 2018, Himachal Pradesh is the only state where Congress managed to form government single-handedly. And so is this going to be the second state where Congress forms the government? And especially in the run-up to 2024, it becomes really important. Kharge, the Congress president, comes from Karnataka, and so it would be a prestige question for him. And then finally, JDS, in some ways, JDS is sort of like a player which is restricted largely in South Karnataka, though they pick up seats in other parts of Karnataka as well. But most of the bulk of their seats come from South Karnataka. So given what happened to them in 2019 election, can JDS bounce back and retain its vote share? And especially now that there is a sort of tussle within the family, the first family of JDS itself, what is the future of JDS looks like going from here? And my final point, and this is something I want both my panelists to reflect on, while a lot of our conversation during this next 10, 15 days and after the results would only focus on, who won and how will it impact the national politics in 2024. I think the importance of Karnataka elections also lies not just in results, but more in the kind of issues that will emerge from it. In some ways, Karnataka, now that the 24 election is just 1 year from now, this will be basically in some ways agenda setting election. So issues that will emerge, be it on the question of corruption, be it on the question of communalism, be it on the question of social justice, especially after Rahul Gandhi's speech in Kolar, some of these issues are going to resonate throughout this 1 year, right? And so what I would like both Maya and Chandan to basically come in at this point, and I'll request Maya to talk largely from the perspective of BJP. What is BJP's strategy going into this election, and how has been the performance of this government? What questions or issues are on people's mind, and how BJP is trying to respond to some of those questions. And then I'll come to Chandan and we'll discuss Congress party in detail. Maya, over to you. Thank you.
Well, yes, the BJP, of course, in the only southern state where it has formed a government, where it has had a chief minister, Karnataka, which it has described as its gateway to the south. This is really the place where the BJP first had an impact. In the other southern states, it's presence is really negligible. Not so in Karnataka. It's formed the government here. It had its first ever chief minister here in South India, in B.S. Yediyurappa. So definitely Karnataka is important to them. It's where they actually had their breakthrough. But although they have formed the government, they've never won a majority in any of the elections. They've always fallen a bit short of that number of 113 that is needed out of in the 224 member assembly. So they've always fallen a bit short. They're hoping, of course, at this time round, they can push past that mark and form the government by themselves. What goes in their favor? Well, we often hear the term anti-incumbency, but let's just look at the term pro-incumbency, if there is such a term. They are there. They are the ruling party. They have formed the government. They have a significant, comfortable majority in the assembly right now. How they got that majority, of course, with those 17 MLAs who crossed over from the Congress and the JDS, that's a different question. But the fact is that right now, they have a good, comfortable majority in the House. They are the ruling party. They are who are seen. The ministers are from the BJP, the chief ministers from the BJP. So if there is such a thing as a pro-incumbency factor, people may be used to seeing the BJP in power. Will that go on? What they're also trying to do very much so is making this, as Karnataka as part of India. The projection of Prime Minister Modi is constant, not just from the national leaders, but from local leaders as well. They're constantly talking about the programs and how much he is contributing, how important he is. Prime Minister Modi is very much a factor in these elections in Karnataka, at least for the BJP. They would like him to be a very important factor indeed. They've spoken a lot and sometimes a little controversially about the double engine government, having the same government at the state and at the center. We had JP Nadda actually saying that if it wasn't the case, if Karnataka had a different state government, then they may not get the blessings of Prime Minister Modi. We'd have Amit Shah saying that riots may happen if the Congress comes to power in the state. And the implication maybe from this that it'll be of a benefit to a state if it's the same government at the center. It's a little uncomfortable to hear in a country that does have a federal structure. But they have said it. And will that play on the minds of the voters in favor of the BJP in the sense that let's just have the same government here so that the central government will help us out? These are the factors which might go in favor of the BJP coming back to power with what they hope is a majority by themselves. What goes against them? There are several factors going against them also. The anti-incumbency, which is what we talk of more often. People know that life is not perfect. People know a lot can be done when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to so many issues. And the hope is, let there be a change. If there's a change, maybe it will be better. And as you were pointing out, Karnataka doesn't tend to repeat governments. It tends to go for a change. Even within the 5 years, there's sometimes a change of chief minister, a change of government, a change of coalition. So is that desire for change going to affect the BJP's performance? If they feel that, if we give a chance to the Congress or to the JDS or to a combination, will things get better? Also, caste is, like it or not, a very important factor in the elections in Karnataka. The BJP's traditional vote base has been considered to be the Lingayats. Of course, no caste group, no community will vote as a bloc, but the Lingayats are definitely seen as largely backing the BJP. But having lost leaders like Jagdish Shettar and Lakshman Savadi, they may not have the strength, the charisma of B.S. Yediyurappa, who is still the big Lingayat leader and in the BJP fold. But they have lost these senior leaders. The Congress is using that to say it's disrespect for the Lingayats. And they're going back to 1990 and Virendra Patil, history which many of the voters will not even remember, saying that there's a history of people being. So will the Lingayats feel that they're being disrespected by these leaders actually going away from the party? That's something which the BJP is trying to play down, and that's something that the Congress is trying to play up. Also, Karnataka, like I said, does have a different history of voting for the state elections and for the center. We very often have had a different state government than in the center. People seem savvy enough to vote differently for local issues in a state election, for national issues in a general election. We very often have not had a double-engine government. We very often have had a party ruling in the state that is different from that at the center. Will that be repeated this time? Well, the Congress would certainly hope so. The JDS would hope so. The BJP is hoping that their double engine promises would be what is really appealing for the voters. And in that context, the BJP is also focusing on national issues. While the other parties are going ultra local, the BJP is focusing on national issues. Whether this will work for them or not is not really very clear, because in an election, people tend to look around them and see what's happening in terms of what they see, the roads, the electricity. They may not be thinking on a larger scale. They're thinking of their local MLA. They're thinking of their local government. So the focus by the BJP on national issues may also backfire. There was a mix-up, a rather awkward mix-up with the reservation quota, of course, with the BJP declaring that 4% of reservation, which was earlier with the Muslims, would be taken away. The Muslims would be able to qualify for the economically weaker section, and that 2% of that 4% would go to the Lingaites, 2% to the Vakiligas, hoping to make these two very dominant caste groups happy. And the Supreme Court has really been saying, not so fast, not so fast. You can't do this quite so easily. So that was a bit of a blow for the BJP as well. And of course, that whole corruption angle. The Congress has been going at it hammer and tongs, and Congress MLAs caught with money, corruption charges against the BJP government, the 40% government as it's being termed, with the Congress saying the 40% government will only get 40 seats. If corruption and the allegations really do play an important role in the mind of the voters, then the BJP could be looking at a bit of trouble on that front as well. That is really where it stands right now.
Thank you, Maya. Let me bring in Chandan here, and especially, someone sitting in here in Delhi. What we keep hearing about the Congress party in Karnataka is that, of course, in comparison to other parts of the country, Congress party organization is much more agile and strong in the state. Of course, it has ruled the state for quite many years. But at the moment, there is a factional feud between two top leaders of the party, right? D.K. Shivakumar and former chief. Is that exaggerated in national media, or is it also sort of like true on the ground? Are there two very different camps trying to basically undo the advantage that Congress might have from the anti-incumbency sentiment, some of those things which Maya described? And second thing, which I wanted your comment or reflection on, which Maya said that, Karnataka has this distinction between local election, like assembly elections versus national elections. And so will that give advantage to the Congress party? And I'm thinking from this perspective that it seems that both parties have 30 to 35% of core base. And then it's generally like 5-10% swing, which changes in these two elections. So where does Congress stand in terms of the factional feud, their ability to make this election local? Of course, like each party will play on its strength. BJP will try to make the election national, and Congress will try to keep it Karnataka centric. And so where are voters on this issue for this election?
Thanks, Rahul. So yeah, I mean, the election is very important for the Congress. I mean, both to get the power back in the state, as well as to prove a point nationally that it's a player to reckon with as a party that can lead a coalition effort against, the NDA in the next Lok Sabha election, and also generally to have a bit of a psychological morale booster. The Bharat Jodo Yatra has happened, and this is an election that's happening post Jodo Yatra, and I'm sure it will be read as, although whether the Yatra has anything to do with the results here or not is a secondary thing, but it will be, claimed to be a kind of a comment, from the ground, as it were, on the Yatra success or non-success. So the factionalism within, I mean, it's an open fact in the sense any elections, you'll find both of these leaders on the posters. The party is not taking any chances in trying to attribute a greater apportioning of the credit for any of these teams to one or the other. The party is being very careful in trying to apportion it equally. but the factionalism is such the common knowledge that Siddaramaiah in his interviews will keep saying, I'm an aspirant. There could be other aspirants, it's legitimate, etc., etc. And we also saw D.K. Shivakumar do a big Homa recently, and the papers report that as a Homa that were meant to make him the CM afterwards. So these things are going on, but it has not been destructive, symbolically destructive. They're still sharing platforms everywhere, and there are photo ops of them, shaking hands and arms around their shoulders, etc. These pictures also circulating to show that it's there will be a contest of sort, but not enough to spoil the game early on. But the crucial fact to remember, when I spoke to a senior Congress leader this afternoon in preparation for this discussion now, and he categorically said at least 15 to 20 tickets may have been poorly allotted as a result of having to compromise between these two campaigns. And that may actually make a big difference between the Congress winning just, a slim majority. That may have actually given them the comfortable majority, which may now elude them. So it was, it's a fairly, big factor in that sense. But then again, this is not really being discussed in the open or as a factor, etc., as yet. The other question about the local thing, it's absolutely true. It has just become like public advice giving on the part of all those who wish well for the Congress. Keep it local. Don't fall for the BJP gambit of pitching Rahul versus Modi, etc. And what does it mean to be local? I mean, there's anti-incumbency, heavy anti-incumbency. So in trying to cash in on that, if corruption was the biggest problem in the previous government, focus on that. And if the previous government saw attempts by the center as well as no attempt by the state to counter these imposition of Hindi, to put a large term, so that is now again put Congress in this peculiar position of having to espouse a federal ethic that it is not normally embracing robustly all these years. So even Rahul Gandhi in a recent meeting asked someone to ask the question in Kannada because this is Karnataka. And he had, Nandini is something that both he and Priyanka have been trying to say is something like a brand that ought to be protected against the Amul. And, it's an interesting, it's not just pure symbolic games. After Amit Shah became the Minister of Cooperation, everyone was wondering, what may this do? What is this new move that the central government hasn't thought of all these years? And soon enough, we realized one of the intentions was to somehow amend a multi-state cooperative act that would allow cooperative unions across states to be merged and the elections to those cooperatives to be centralized. And, so which, there are lakhs of farmer households that are, that sell milk on a daily basis and that interact with the state in that capacity. And the interaction is now happening with the central government body. So the idea was that, and most of them are in the southern Karnataka region, which is where you kept saying the BJP has a poor presence. So it's a very, and these facts have come out. And come out later. But initially there was a symbolic sort of emotional response that, don't crush this band, let them be, etc. Obviously, Amul has always been available here. Protest is about daily supply of Amul milk and curd. It's not about, Amul products in general, because that seemed to be especially systematically damaging of the existing grassroots sort of ties. So yeah, the Congress has been doing these things, and the BJP for its part is trying to do its thing by saying, there'll be more riots, trying to bring in the Hindu-Muslim angle. And the Congress has not really been foregrounding that at all. It's trying to say corruption. It's trying to talk about social justice, like you said, but with reference to caste reservations and not communal relations. So even Nadda tried to bring in Modi, etc. And we know there has been actually good pushback. Rahul, the way the elections have taken off, the Congress's rallies have been large and impressive. I mean, if you look at these things as tokens of a certain kind of put togetherness in the party, so you've seen that. psychologically, things are, they've started off on the right foot. Now, and the BJP also finds itself on a peculiarly and unusually defensive mood, and Maya alluded to this, on the Lingayat question. After having done whatever they've done, that is removing, big Lingayat leaders, and seeing them actually go over to the Congress, which they may not have anticipated. Please remember, Rahul, there were other leaders they removed who were quite happy to say, okay, we'll not be in politics anymore. And this is the response they expected from those two people as well, but they have actually been comfortable moving out of the Congress. And there is a nascent sense among the Lingayat communities that something wrong is happening here. Now, whether this thing translates into a few more seats for the Congress in Mumbai, Karnataka, where it did poorly last time, we don't know. But in a psychological sense, can you hear me, Rahul?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Chandan, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I thought your images froze and I thought I was not getting across.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So I think it's the Congress had seemed like a party that was not offering a home for the Lingayats. All other castes could feel it was their party except the Lingayats. And popularly, and even in scholarship, they attribute that to that Virendra Patil moment, the way Rajiv Gandhi insulted him and suspended his government from the airport, etc., etc. I don't think that can explain the whole story, but it is definitely an event that has gone down as a watershed event. And this actually could be BJP's Virendra Patil moment. But they're trying their very best not to allow it for that to happen. And the Congress is also trying to be very slow. And it's not, you can just imagine if the roles were reversed, what we would have seen by if it was a BJP that was in the position of the Congress side. It would have been all of that. But not now, but we still have 20 days left. I think it's happening slowly on the ground. No Lingayat Swamiji has spoken as of yet in saying, oh, we are pained to see what's happened, etc. But we may see that. And MB Patil and a few other Lingayat leaders, and Jagdish Shettar in every press conference will say that I have been wrong and we have been wrong. And that can't not, go nowhere. I mean, it's going to cost them something. So I think the BJP has been reckless in that regard, but my own suspicion is that they knew that this time the currents are not in their favor. So maybe this is the time for us to do the shake-up and then
the party
time around. And please remember, it's not just the Lingayat leaders. Even Ashok, who was a big Kokaliga leader within the party, has now been asked to contest against Siddaramaiah. If he suffers a defeat, it's going to be difficult for him to lay claim to be an important person in the party. So there are a lot of these things are happening alongside. Some actually say this may be BJP's way of saying, let's not have anyone calling the shots locally. Let them all be there. Only the center will call the shots. No one shall become important on their own, too important on their own. And this is again a knowledgeable insider, and maybe that is the planning. Okay, Rahul, if you just look at sorry, Rahul. So the Congress again is repeating the Himachal Pradesh experiment here by having 4 populist schemes. I can quickly run them by 200 units of free electricity, right, and 3,000 rupees as unemployment stipend for the unemployed graduates across the state. 2,000 rupees for every housewife in a woman-headed house. 10 cases of free rice. And this, I believe, 50% of the territorial reach of Karnataka has already been covered in terms of messaging. And the remaining 20 days of micro-campaigning is going to complete the remainder of this task of making sure it reaches them. The manifestos have not been officially released. We saw an initial attempt in December and Jan. The Congress said we'll have separate manifestos for different regions, 10-point manifesto. And you saw one from Karnataka, one for the coastal region. But we didn't see the manifestos for the other parts of the state. Maybe other things took priority, I don't know. But this thing is going to be the key thing. The manifesto details can go to hell. These four things are going to be the ones we make sure people will register and whatever.
So, Chandan, can I come back to you in the second
yes.
round? Okay.
Yes.
Let me ask Maya, just to reflect on two things. One, and both of you actually to talk about the third force, JDS, quickly, and then we can cover other issues. JDS has been in alliance with both BJP as well as in Congress, right? So in some, and slowly over years, JDS has also been reduced to largely a family-centric party. So my first question actually to both of you, since you watch this much more closely, is this perception true? Is it just a family-centric party, or does it still have resonance among some sections of society more than Vocaligas, which is the primary base of JDS? And two, because I like, and this is my reading of both your sort of opening remarks, that while it seems that both of you are saying that given the historical trends and everything, BJP seems to be on the back foot, Congress has slight advantage, but that advantage is not far enough to take it to the majority mark. Does that mean JDS will again get a chance to play the kingmaker, and in that sense lies its hope of holding one foot in Karnataka power circle? So Maya first, and then Chandan.
Well, yes, of course, it is a party definitely headed by the family. The family you think of immediately, you think of former Prime Minister H.D. Devegowda, his son Kumaraswamy, the other brother as well, Revanna. Daughters-in-law have contested, grandsons have contested. There's a grandson who's the only JDS MP from the Janata Dal Secular. Yes, it is. But it does go beyond that. It does have an appeal which goes beyond the family in that entire old Mysuru region. It's definitely a force to be reckoned with. Kumaraswamy and H.D. Devegowda do have that factor of pulling in crowds, of getting an appeal, that mysterious factor which some politicians have. Both father and son do have that. It goes beyond the family. It is a very strong presence, largely limited to one geographical area of the state. Yes, they very much want to be kingmaker, maybe even king, like, for example, in the last elections when they were the third largest party. But the chief minister eventually turned out to be from the Janata Dal Secular, H.D. Kumaraswamy again. And yes, they have been in coalitions with both the Congress and the BJP, very uncomfortable coalitions eventually for the other party, historically so. Both the Congress and the BJP have reasons to not quite trust or to absolutely have total faith in Mr. Kumaraswamy and his party. He, of course, walked out of the coalition with the Congress. He moved across to the BJP. And when it became time for him to hand over the chief ministership to B.S. Yediyurappa, Mr. Kumaraswamy said, no, I'm not doing that. So even though Yediyurappa was sworn in as the BJP's first chief minister, he had to resign again in less than a week. So they've both been burnt by the JDS. But of course, if they fall short of that 113 figure, and if the JDS can provide it to them, I don't think either party will say, oh, absolutely not, no chance, we're not looking at the JDS, no. They will not do that, which is always a tricky thing in the run-up to any Karnataka election. You compete against each other, you fight against the other party, you criticize the leaders, you criticize the other parties, but you have to kind of keep a doorway open to take a 180-degree turn and then work with that party sometimes. And if that does happen, well, then maybe the JDS will have another role to play. It is very much a regional party. It doesn't have much of a presence. It does have a little bit of a presence in some other states, but not much of a presence. So in an election fought on local issues, that is a kind of advantage for the JDS because they are very local. They are hyper-local. They're very much where they are. So they would certainly hope to be kingmakers in this election as well. They are playing their cards close to their chest. And of course, the official line is that they will form the government on their own. But that doesn't seem very likely to happen.
Yeah. Chandan, just to add to what Maya is saying, in this election, not just that BJP tried to divide that 4% Muslim reservation between both Lingayats and Vocaligas. So in some ways, BJP is trying to woo the other big sort of dominant peasant community, Vocaligas, right? Not just through this 2% quota, but also, at least in media reports, we hear that BJP has substantially increased the number of tickets that it has given to Vokaligga. And so, what is your sense? Is BJP going to continue to make inroads in the southern sort of Karnataka region, which is JDS stronghold? And is there a sort of larger game plan? I'm not saying a conspiracy between the two national parties, but as long as JDS is there, they will always be dependent on basically JDS to form the government. So is there any attempt sort of by BJP to woo some Vokaligga? And if that happens, who is going to lose there? Is it the Congress's Vokaligga base, or is it the JDS Vokaligga base? Because JDS does not have, at least what I read, from many things to offer apart from this entire sort of centered around family. So,
Rahul, I missed almost a just froze. Unfortunately, I'm not sure why the Wi-Fi is behaving this way. Now,
yeah. So, in briefly, what I'm asking is that BJP is trying to make inroads in southern Karnataka and trying to woo Vokaliggas.
I heard that.
The last part is actually if there is even a modest remote success in BJP's strategy to woo Vokaliggas, who would lose out? Will it be the Congress party or will it be the JDS? Let's wait for 30 seconds. Otherwise, I'll request you to, I'll ask you a separate question and then we can come back to it. Yeah. So here is my question till we figure out Chandan's internet issue. Is that, in every election, political parties try last minute strategies. In 2018, the Congress party promised separate religion status to Lingayats, trying to woo them up. That didn't work. BJP tried this 2% business. I'm not sure whether, even if it would have gone through, whether it would have given some sort of pull, not just among Lingayats, but some inroads among Vokaliggas. And there are lots of issues, as you rightly mentioned, are stacked against the BJP, right? The corruption, the internal sort of conflict and tussle. BJP also tried to rake up the issue on communalism front with hijab controversy and other things. And then local versus national. Of course, each party is going to play on its strength and downplay the weaknesses, right? And Congress also tries to basically say, okay, we have four of these themes. How do voters react to this sort of last minute wooing and where do Karnataka voters stand on some of these things?
Well, one view, of course, is that people have already decided who they're voting for. That some voters may change their choice when it comes to the party or the candidate, but most of the time they already know well in advance of the election who they're voting for, and that it may not be likely that anything last minute is going to change that unless it's really hugely dramatic. An unexpected candidate or something happens, or there's a sympathy factor in case of, unless it's really something dramatic. There is that theory that all these last minute campaigns and manifestos and promises may not change the mind of a voter who's already decided what they're going to do. But certainly there is the perception that, for example, the corruption issue, which the Congress is hoping will have some impact, they're hoping that it will, that the 40% government tag, that the PCM slogan that they had coined against Basvaraj Bommai, they're hoping that it will pay off. But also cynically speaking, maybe, or realistically speaking, does corruption really resonate with the Indian voter anymore? Have we become accepting of it in a sad way, thinking it is there? Do we say, yeah, they're corrupt, but they get things done? Yes, they're corrupt, but so is that person also, but I like this person better. Does the Indian voter think, yes, corruption is part of the course, in which case corruption allegations may not have the relevance or the impact that the party leveling those allegations may hope. The other issue, of course, is that whole communal issue, the whole division of society, the whole pressure, the whole stress on a Hindutva agenda, which is certainly something which supporters of the BJP have been trying in some coastal area, whether it was the hijab issue, whether it was other issues, whether it was halal meat. There were several issues, not allowing Muslim vendors to sell outside temples, at temple fairs, which they've been doing for decades, if not centuries. How successful will this be? The Hindutva agenda may have worked with the BJP elsewhere. Will it work for them in Karnataka? I have heard people who study Karnataka well say that it may not work so well in Karnataka, that Karnataka has a history of being more of a accepting, united society, whether that is wishful thinking or whether it is the case. It's still not clear how much the Hindutva agenda will actually work in Karnataka. Caste, of course, always a factor. But I do really wonder whether these last minute promises and appeals and campaigns will change the mind of a voter who's always voted BJP or always voted Congress or is a diehard JDS. They may just go ahead with the same button in the elections this time.
Okay. Chandan, before you froze up, yes, now I can hear you. The question was actually, so first we don't know whether BJP's strategy to woo Vocaligas in this election through the quota issue and then basically trying to increase the number of tickets that have been given to members of Vocaliga community. So the first question is, will it have even remote sort of success, especially given that BJP has been able to make some inroads in South Karnataka? And second, if there is going to be some success which BJP manages to break the Vocaliga stronghold from Congress and JDS, who's likely to lose more? Will it be Vocaliga support base of Congress or will it be Vocaliga support base of JDS?
It's a great question, Rahul, but this, I think we'll have to preserve that question for the next assembly election, because I don't think they'll get any seat in this region. This time it will still be a JDS Congress contest. The BJP is going to be a third in most places. Maybe one or two it may do okay. But again, please remember the Vocaligas who live outside this, these 4 districts, like in the Malnad areas, they feel comfortable with the BJP. They voted BJP before. The Vocaligas in Bangalore and Mysore have voted BJP before. So we're really talking about rural Vocaligas, actually, and in this part of Karnataka. So that's a distinction that needs to make, which is why, the JDS, because it draws its support mainly from this area, when it calls itself a regional party and a farmers' party, it's the regional party that doesn't have any space for the urban issues. The manifesto will have plenty of concrete proposals for Bangalore and other urban areas, but in the way it presents itself, it has no a female spokesperson. It has just one person who can speak in English. And look at the tweets of the leaders; they're all in Kannada, no translations. Everything will tell you that they're essentially, operating from this, from a sense of the region that is actually, I feel, needs to be rethought, because the manifesto will actually be mindful of urban issues very comprehensively.
Yeah.
But the other things that you see them do, you wouldn't guess that. That's one thing. Now, it is a huge puzzle on everyone's minds. In case there's a hung assembly, where might the JDS go? And the answer is going to be complex. As long as there is Deve Gowda, he will never allow for this party to go with the BJP again. So it will have to be Congress or sit in the opposition. Now, again, this question is a little too premature, because if it turns out that the Muslims of Karnataka have voted strategically this time, in the sense that they've supported Congress wherever they are closest to defeating BJP and supported JDS wherever they are close to defeating BJP, then the JDS will not find it easy to go to BJP. If you remember, Rahul, last elections, the Congress's campaign to call JDS, B team of the BJP.
BJP.
They succeeded, hugely succeeded. In even in constituencies where the biggest Janata Dal candidates were contesting, even Kumaraswamy's constituency, they didn't vote. So this, and actually some BJP seats were won as a result of this, because they voted unwisely for the Congress when he was in the third position. So that is not likely to happen now, and which will mean it won't be as easy for JDS to go along with the BJP. Because please, always, when the JDS continued to tell everyone and itself that it was a Vokaliga support-based party, the Vokaliga support never crossed more than 40% of the Vokaliga voters. It's always Vokaligas plus Muslims, plus a few OBCs. This was the combination they worked with all these years. And the Muslim part of that equation came unstuck last time, expecting it very badly, actually, in many constituencies. But they were expecting, they got 39. 38. That was so in a way, we can't answer this question before the election. We'll have to wait to see how the voting is happening. But whether it was a family party, what you asked me earlier, Rahul, initially it was like a fabulous alternate party that was no one's party. The Janata Party, the leaders from all castes, and being quite the alternative actually to the Congress formation. Anti-communal, secular, democratic, but non-Congress. That sort of a. But slowly, if you simply observe how it's evolved, I mean, it's been a ruthless elimination of some of the tallest leaders of the party. I mean, and really became very tightly family controlled. And from what I've heard, they say, well, look around you. The DMK is family controlled. There are so many other parties that are family controlled, and this is also like that. But unfortunately, Karnataka isn't like the Tamil Nadu. The evolution of DMK is very different than others. So it's not quite that, but no ambiguity about it being a family party. It is family controlled, but they expect everyone to feel comfortable with that fact and not be continually shocked by that fact or to see it as unusual or strange. So it's as if we are going to be here. Now let's talk. Let's do things. And Kumaraswamy has spent an enormous amount of time campaigning in the Lingayat-dominated northern Karnataka regions, last election and the election before that, but hasn't given him a whole lot of returns because the BJP and the Congress next have essentially, the Lingayat identification is so total. I mean, BJP as a Lingayat party, whatever the BJP may say, it's still being Hindu, etc. For them, it is their part. And the Vokaligas think JDS is their part. Congress is like everyone's part. So, it's in that kind of a position. So, because the identification of JDS as a Vokaliga party is so total in these regions, the BJP making inroads is going to be very difficult. And, they fielded candidates even last time. And they were all Vokaliga candidates in these areas. And the performance now will be marginally more, maybe even substantially more, but not enough to mean anything for the electoral outcome. They're spending more money. More people are, I think the psychological sense of, having gone in there is probably greater now than before. But I think this was the response to your...
I'll request members of audience to just put their questions on Q&A, which I can pick. And so while, you type your questions on chat box, let me pose one last question from my side to both Maya and Chandan to respond, which is, Bangalore came up. So Karnataka, has a large urban population, somewhere around 40 to 45%. The Bangalore region has almost 15 to 18% of Karnataka seats. And while we all love Bangalore weather, we also dread Bangaluru's, traffic. And so Chandan also mentioned that there is a lot of talk in manifestos about improving the infrastructure in some of these cities. So, what are the concerns? What's the difference between the concerns of urban Karnataka voters versus rural Karnataka voters? Are there any differences? We know nationally that BJP does well among urban voters, but I don't think that's the case in Karnataka because Congress and JDS also do well in pockets of greater Bangalore region. And second question is largely related to this emerging thing, which is BJP actually used to trail among women voters across the country, which seem to be changing now. In 2019, the survey data actually indicates that BJP's vote share among men and women are now almost similar. And post 2019, BJP creates higher vote share among women compared to what other parties get. So in UP, for example, both Lokniti CSDS data and Access My India data indicates that almost half of BJP's lead over SP came because of women voters. BJP led SP more than 10 percentage point among women voters. So is there something like that developing in Karnataka for politics? Like, how are women voters going to, vote? So these two, urban versus rural, and then gender differences of women voters. Maya first and then Chandan. And meanwhile, I'll request people to please put your questions on Q&A box, and I'll pick them up in my next round.
I was just actually something from what Chandan had said about how the JDS tends to eliminate other big leaders in the party. It just put me in mind of Siddaramaiah, the Congress's powerful Siddaramaiah, who was a JDS man, who was a JDS man until he fell out of the family. So, I mean, that's just one example. It's a perfectly valid thing that people don't want big leaders. You also mentioned it in the context of the BJP, not perhaps wanting huge state level leaders like Yediyurappa is not always easy to deal with. So it's very interesting how parties may not want others to be powerful within the party. It's a very interesting point. Urban and rural concerns, well, yes, there, of course, there is the concentration of the population, the number of seats, 28 seats, and the number of seats in the city of Bengaluru and big urban pockets like Mysuru, Mangalore. The concerns remain the same. Our cities, not necessarily peculiarly Karnataka, but our Indian urban areas are quite pathetic when it comes to basic living standards for the population. We're still talking of something about like roads without potholes, potable drinking water, good infrastructure, for good road infrastructure where you can travel from one place to the other. The metro has surfaced, it is surfacing, it is expanding, so it is taking people a little faster. But we're still at a very basic level here. We're still looking at very basic needs for the urban voter. So it's very easy for the opposition to pick up an issue when they want to highlight failures of the civic administration, because there are always problems. Rural voters, well, of course, the farmers need this basic support price. Support price has been a long-standing issue in terms of help, in terms of attention being paid to them like that. There were protests here as well when it came to the farm laws, central farm laws. Regarding women voters, I really do not know which way the women will vote, but women do vote in Karnataka to quite an extent. They are interested. One thing I would like to point out, though, is the dismal number of tickets given to women candidates in all three parties, the number of candidates, women candidates in the JDS, the BJP, the Congress. It is quite pathetic.
Chandan, you have any
I don't think we have seen any trend to show that women prefer party A or party B as yet. I've not seen it being discussed anywhere. But it's interesting what you mentioned. We'll keep our eyes open this time around.
No, in fact, this happened not just in one place, Chandan. It happened in Assam. It happened in UP. So in like post 2020, so in 2019, that gap closed. And post 2021, what we are seeing that BJP has started getting more votes among women voters. And some of we don't have a good explanation for it, but you can think of a combination of it, which is some of the welfare schemes are especially targeted at women. Perhaps BJP's focus, or at least rhetoric on law and order, creates that kind of condition. So please go ahead. Sorry.
The BJP's manifesto isn't out yet. I've not seen it. But the Congress manifesto definitely has women as a target. The monthly stipend for women in all households. The JDS actually, I feel it's far more sensitive to the rural issue. If you look at, they had this Pancharatna scheme. A lot of them show an extreme sensitivity to the rural distress. But Rahul, as you and I know as social scientists, these remedial sort of measures are almost always of a episodic kind. I mean, we'll help you for now. They're not structural sorts of securities that you'd expect the rural sector to get. The agrarian sector becoming more secure as a result of some, systemic legal measures or some new institutional, measures for offering credit or procurement of produce, etc. This is not what we're seeing. We're seeing a monthly stipend. We're seeing, actually a very moving detail in Karnataka's villages today is the inability of eligible men to find wives. And the GPS actually has a concrete offer that a woman who is willing to marry someone who is in a village will get 2 lakhs plus payment. So so it's showing a certain kind of alertness to kinds of issues that are there. At the same time, they've said, a free cylinder to everyone. These sorts of things are for across the board. But like I said, the urban issues, there are the usual middle class issues, infrastructure, beautification concerns, air quality, regular water supply, and, these sorts of things that you would expect them to anyway have. But we also know that the voting participation of these classes is not as robust as their enthusiasm about articulating. 51% last election. So the slums, the lower income, sort of, they are the determining thing here. And we know that during COVID relief measure, some MLAs have done better than others in trying to ensure that the relief packets reach them, etc. And all of that will get them good dividends this time. So we need to see, what kind of a factor that will prove to be. Sometimes I remember parties having separate manifestos for cities and the rest of Karnataka. But then the manifestos have a strange kind of irrelevance in the sense, both as mobilizing mechanisms before the election and as forces that last for accountability later on. What did you do vis-a-vis the promises you made? No one seems to care. So there is that side to it. But the Bangalore city has 28 MLAs. And they will be more or less evenly divided between the Congress and JDS. BJP. JDS might get 2, I think, which is what they had. But yeah, the city does think of itself as a separate being. There's no doubt about that. At least even the eyes of the politicians, they seem to make a special gestures towards city voters.
Maya, let me also now pick questions from the from participants and audience. I think that 2 questions. One, Yedurappa being the tallest leader is both in some of Karnataka and also BJP is both a boon and bane, or sometimes headache for the BJP. Right? BJP has not been able to find a solution of or at least imagine a post Yedurappa BJP in Karnataka. So last time also they had to replace him and bring in new chief ministers. This time also they decided to replace him and bring Mumbai. So was that decision, but yet Yedurappa is an important part of the campaign committee and not the chief of the campaign committee in that sense. So do you think, can BJP imagine a post, like would it be easy for now with some sort of purging, or Yedurappa will sort of like keep hanging on BJP's neck for many, like keep hanging in a sense that BJP can't imagine a future without Yedurappa very soon? And second one, something which you mentioned during your comments is that the politics around communalism and Hindutva does not have that resonance in Karnataka, maybe sort of like in coastal Karnataka, part of coastal Karnataka. Is there any reason, what is peculiar about Karnataka that, it doesn't have that kind of resonance?
Well, on Yedurappa, the party certainly knows they need him. It happened in 2013 when he was angry and he moved away from the party and formed his own party. He didn't do brilliantly. I think it was just about 6 seats of the KJP won, but he took enough votes away and enough seats for the Congress to come back. So they know that they need Yedurappa. he will always historically be their first ever chief minister in Karnataka. And while there are several BJP leaders in the state, it was largely seen as Yediyurappa who built it up to the level of a party that could actually form a government. They know they can't get rid of him quite so easily. He stepped down, of course. He was pressured to step down when the Lokayukta report on illegal mining came out, and allegations of his involvement in that forced him to step down way back then, where he was replaced by Sadananda Gowda, Jagadish Shettar and all. And of course, this time as well, he was made to step down, very tearfully announcing that in the Vidhan Sauda. He was made to step down, replaced by a fellow Lingayat, Basvaraj Bommai. But even now, even though he's not in the election in terms of as a contestant, he still demanded and managed to get a ticket for his son Vijendra in his home constituency of Shikaripura. It was given to Vijendra. Now, Vijendra is a bit of a divisive factor within the BJP itself, but still Yediyurappa managed to get that. But what you're talking about, the removal of the old guard, the removal of the old loyalists, they have to be careful. They have to make sure it doesn't backfire. They wouldn't take the risk with Yediyurappa that they took with Jagadish Shettar. They haven't taken that risk yet, but there has always been talk of a kind of division between officials at the center at the top level in the BJP and Yediyurappa himself. And they may decide that it's just not worth it having somebody who's too strong at the state level, as we were talking about earlier. But Yediyurappa, they do know they need to keep him happy. They don't want to let him go quite so fast.
Okay. And what
Rahul,
would be
the puzzle is, why is Yediyurappa hanging on? In the sense, that's the thing. And we can only second guess, because he's been humiliated beyond belief. He was the one who brought the coalition down, kept all the defectors to get elected, and gave them berths, each one of them berths. All of them accommodated him. And then he was asked to step down, and it was a tearful stepping down. And then he was hoping his son would get a berth, and they did not give him a berth. The ticket that he's been given now is small crumb as far as he's concerned. I mean, what the hell? He even announced his candidature before the official announcement of the ticket happened. Let's see what you do now. So he is doing some damage control, and this is his last. We won't see him the next time around. We won't see many others the next time around. But I think the BJP has taken a huge risk. It's a reckless move. And maybe they have some insight into how the Lingayats may not leave us regardless of what we do to the leaders. I don't know what the reading of the Lingayat electorate is. But it's definitely, I'm not sure if Yediyurappa is doing all of this damage control out of a love for the party that he helped build, etc. I just see some other force playing upon. And I wouldn't want to, second guess what those constraints might be.
What would be both of your response to the question on why most of the issues related to communalism or Hindutva has presence only in
important question. Rahul, I think there are many local answers to that. I mean, if you just look at the old Mysore region, you go back to the time of Tipu Sultan and the Wadayas after, no communal strife in within. The Wadaya ruler actually spoke fluent Urdu, and he's inaugurating mosques, and he's not said a single negative thing about it. So there's this great culture of living without friction that the rulers had somehow managed to instill. So you need to step back in time to get a longer historical sense for how these regions have formed. And there are no memories of communal violence. And the attempts to villainize Tipu is an attempt to create memories where they don't exist. So that explains this region. The Hyderabad Karnataka region, it's a great laboratory of Sufi, faith and the Lingayat faith commingling, living together over centuries. And the language is testimony to this mingling. It's replete. The Dakkani Urdu is so much part of the Kannada there. It is Lingayat BJP supporters would say, we may all be voting them, but no riots here. There will never be riots because there is so much, goodwill and solidarity between people here. And it's true. We haven't seen communal tensions there. So it's support for the BJP without support for the Hindutva. Maybe some love for Modi, I don't know, in an abstract sense, but definitely not as someone who is, trying to make it a Hindu Rashtra. That sort of belief is what is guiding that. The coastal region, as you all mentioned before, is truly and properly ideologized place, the Hindutva ideology. But the rest of it is all local calculations.
Okay.
So it's historical background plus local calculations. So, you can't, I think people are showing a certain unwillingness to go along with communal sort of gambits. There is communalism on the caste front. Castes, to be trying to get what they want. But that's not communalism. In our context, it's between religions.
Yeah. Yes.
And that hasn't happened.
Maya, would you like to add
something to this? This is the Ashish Nandi thesis.
Okay.
The more urban you are, the more likely to be so vulnerable to the Hindutva thing. I think that's true. In Bangalore, Mysore, you might find people who are. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Outside of the coastal region, where there are, of course, very many unhappy circumstances of this kind of divide being expressed. Traditionally, as Chandan was saying, many of the Hindu yatras would start off by passing through a mosque. It would be a very close association of people living together, which it sounds utopian, but it should not be utopian. That is the way it should be. So it's a good thing that in many parts of Karnataka, a divisive narrative has not really taken root. Historically, socially, whether it's the personality of the people of the state, if there is such a thing. Our state song, our state anthem talks about the different religions and all living together. I just hope that the core of that does not change. I can't really put my finger on it on the why. Chandan has spoken about some historical reasons as well. But let's just hope that divisions don't take root in the state.
So before, this is last question, just to close the conversation. We'll come to know of the result on 13th May. But in these 2 weeks or 20 days from now, what is the single most important issue or a combination of issues that you think will shape up not just the Karnataka verdict this time, but also may have resonance in the run-up to 2024? Will it be just the performance of the government, corruption? Will it be centralizing tendencies of the central government, like Chandan mentioned about the Amul versus Nandini debate? Or will it be issues of communalism, social justice, caste equations? What should people who are sitting far away from Karnataka would be watching and reading? Maya, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I think, of course, one big question which would be answered is the future, the survival of the Congress. If they can do well in this big state, it could be a perch from which they could work on to move elsewhere as well. It would mean that they are not totally eliminated as a national level party. So it would indicate the strength of the Congress ahead of 2024, which would be very important as a base, as you had mentioned earlier, as a kind of coalescing force for the opposition, whether the Congress would get that sense of importance if it does well in this very important, very big state of Karnataka. That would be something to be taken away. Also, it would also be a kind of referendum perhaps on the attempts at Hindutva, the attempts of trying to communalize issues, to communalize certain areas. How successful has that been for the BJP? Can that work? And also, it will also give an indication of how seriously voters consider the issue of corruption. Because certainly in the run-up to these elections, the BJP has really been on the back foot when it comes to allegations of corruption, charges against it. And if they manage to get away with that, if it doesn't really have an impact on the voting, then it'll also be an indication of what voters, how importantly voters view corruption, whether it is an issue at all for them in the elections. I think these are three of many issues, of course, but these are just three perhaps of some takeaways from the results as they will happen in May.
Yeah, Chandan?
Rahul, since what should people watch for? The Congress has been so thoroughly suspected everywhere of being inefficient, not properly united, etc. We'll see, if what kind of a fight they'll put up. We might actually see them put a very determined, concerted, sort of a coordinated fight. So that's something to watch for. I would say the same for JDS. People had written it off. This is it. Let them hold on to what they have, or they may get less. I have a feeling they may do better. We haven't mentioned the very important fact of the rebel candidates, Rahul. There are 19 rebel candidates in the Congress who are contesting as independents. And there are 14 in the BJP contesting as independents. And many rebel candidates, some of them have gone over to the JDS, which actually improve their vote tally in North Karnataka by 6 or 7. We don't know. And like I said, JDS started its campaign in October. And the first list came out in November. And they're very confident that they managed to reach the voters and get them to think that their party will do good for them. And they're very confident. And I have a feeling there may be a surprise element there in terms of how many seats they'll end up winning. But this is again, so this is again to watch. And the violence part, Rahul, we're having a single phase election on the presumption that there won't be any problems in holding them at the same time. But just today, Shobha Karandlaje, the BJP
minister
politician, has written a letter, minister has written a letter to the Election Commission saying, you must be identifying these places as sensitive, these places as extra sensitive, and make sure there are adequate police forces there. And, and the opposition is already hitting back saying, isn't this the Election Commission's job to identify what are sensitive areas and what are you doing? So I'm just wondering if we may see violence that no one had expected to see in the next 20 days. We don't know. We don't know. Even Amit Shah's remark yesterday, an election victory for Congress will simply mean more riots in the state. How do you understand that statement? It can be read in many ways. So there are these things that I think we should also be watching for in this election here. And then the famed conspiracy about the EVMs being a big, source of machinations. Again, I don't believe in that, but we should see. So I think there are these sorts of things to also watch for alongside. And the quality of speeches, what will Modi do in the next 35 rallies he's supposed to hold here? What will he end up speaking will also make a difference to what the opposition will end up responding, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all things to watch for.
Thank you.
And opposition community, Rahul, just one last thing. Post-election, if we would like to see opposition unity in the center, putting up front, we will need to see some evidence of that at the state level. That's...
No, thank you so much, Chandan and Maya, for covering such a vast sort of like range of conversation, range of topics which we picked up today and discussed. Thank you for patiently answering some of my questions and educating us about where the Karnataka politics is heading. To the audience, thank you for being a patient listener and putting up your questions. We look forward to meeting some of you on May 15th. We'll soon release the date and time for another round of discussion on Karnataka politics post-elections. Thank you so much, both Chandan and Maya.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.